special interests, the drug companies, the insurance companies, the banks, the people who decide and determine everything in Washington, our voices won't be heard. We need to make sure that our voices are as loud as any co-brother. But you need to do it by getting the money out of politics, restoring voting rights, and standing up to the greed and corruption that controls things. I am the candidate that will do that. I'm the only candidate who has a record of doing that exactly, and standing up to the culture of corruption as well as the special interests that run everything in Washington. And I know I can do this as President of the United States, and I also know I can bring this country back together again. Because at the end of the day, we must heal the nation, we must restore this moral integrity that's been lost, restore our leadership on the world stage, remind the American people we are so much stronger when we care about one another, when we treat others the way we want to be treated, when we care about the least among us. That is what a good president will do. That is what a brave president will do. That is what I will do as president, and that is why I'm going to win. So the mic, you're going to come up and call on folks?
You can keep the microphone. I think I'm
Okay.
loud enough to just hear me. So the senator, thank you very much for your remarks, and she's agreed to answer some questions. Who has one? Go ahead.
You guys want to come and sit? There's seats right in the middle, and you can ask questions.
Yeah.
Anyone under 15 gets the first, second, or third question.
There you go.
You get a privilege, and I love that book. It's one of my favorites.
My question is a follow-up. You talked
Yes.
about withdrawing from Iraq.
Yes.
That will be difficult, obviously.
Yes.
I want to know how you're going to orchestrate that,
Yes.
how you can pull that off.
Yes.
Because we're going to have to admit it was a terrible blunder, and we're not good at admitting our mistakes.
I don't think we need to say that specifically. I think what we, how do you get our troops out of Iraq? And do you have to say that it was a blunder? My view is this. I don't think we should have ever been in Iraq in the first place. I think President George W. Bush lied to the American people. I think he falsified the evidence of weapons of mass destruction for his own purposes to become a wartime president. He foretold that when he gave his speech about the axis of evil. It's no surprise. It's one of the reasons why I decided to run for Congress, because when I heard him give that speech, I was sitting with Jonathan and I just said, oh my God, he's going to bomb those three countries. I'm gravely concerned that President Trump is continuing the axis of evil, because if you remember, it was Iraq, North Korea, and Iran. Was it not? I believe it was. And so I think that President Trump wants to start a war in Iran. I think he's trying to saber rattle specifically, and it causes me great concern. So I would draw down our troops from Iraq immediately, because they are not serving an anti-terrorism function that's as effective as other things we could be doing. So I would draw those troops down. I would draw them down from Afghanistan. The truth is, the Iraqi government and the Afghanistan government have to create stability in their own countries. We've been training their troops for a long time. We've been supporting their service members for a long time. They're going to have to do it. We can do special operations missions when needed to deploy for certain anti-terrorism missions, but we do not need troops on the ground. We do not need thousands and thousands of troops. I don't think our troops should be in Syria. I don't think this president has the authority to have our troops in Syria. And I do not think we should be deploying the 1,200 troops that they've just admitted to that they want to send to the border regions of Iran. I think that is saber rattling. I think it will harm us and it will destabilize the region.
Thank you.
Senator, assuming you're our party's nominee, you're on the debate stage with Trump, how are you going to deal with and handle his abusive remarks and nature?
You know, when I see President Trump's behavior, it often reminds me of a spoiled toddler. And so I would speak to him exactly as I would a spoiled child. When he starts to loom over me and come into my space, I will say, go back to your spot. Your space is over there. When he interrupts me, I will say, excuse me, it's not your turn. Wait your turn. And speak to him like the spoiled child that he is. Because he is not someone that I think we should get down in the mud with. I don't think name calling is as effective as actually calling out the behavior for what it is. And so I would do that, because I believe if you're going to get in a fight with a pig and you get down into the mud with the pig A lot of what's been going on between Speaker Pelosi and President Trump, when she shines, it's largely when she dismisses him. When she says, don't define me, do not tell me, what I'm going to do, and no, we're not going to give you money for that wall. When she dismisses him, I think she's at her most effective.
Yes, thank you, Naomi. I got a pretty good deep voice. How would the Gillibrand administration go about restoring faith, morale, and integrity back in our beleaguered agencies like FBI, Homeland Security, CIA?
Yeah.
These folks work hard all the time defending us, but get beat down. How would you go about restoring that faith?
Well, I would first of all thank them for their service. They are all public servants, and I would build them up and lift them up, because the truth is they are trying to keep us safe. They are trying to protect this country. All of our first responders are, all of our intelligence agencies are. The second thing I would do is I have this idea, it's a big idea about how to get to debt-free college, and it's about national public service. I would ask America's youth, if you're willing to do a year of public service, we will pay for 2 years of community college or state school. If you're willing to do 2 years of public service, we're willing to pay for 4 years. And I would open up that public service to all our first responders, to our intelligence agencies, to the military. It's an expansion of the GI Bill. I would also include education, and I would include healthcare, because we have a crisis in needing more nurses, more home health aides, more early childhood educators, and more teachers. And so if you can open up those industries to young people, give them the chance to see what it feels like to spend your life serving others first, I think it changes their hearts, I think it changes their career trajectories, and I think it changes the character of the country in one generation. All the divisiveness and selfishness that President Trump has tried to evangelize will fall away, because he wants us to be afraid of one another. He wants us to fear our neighbors. He wants us to close our borders and build walls. But that is not who we are, and it's not who we've been in our best moments as a nation. So I think a call to national public service is an antidote to the hate, fear, and anxiety it was created.
That's a very good idea.
Ready, honey? You got the microphone. Don't be afraid. I'm right here. Love that question. What is my favorite Lizzo song? Okay, time for karaoke. Who's got the put the song on? Come on, Alex, put it on. So it's the one that goes. Something like, I flip my hair back, check my nails, baby, how you feel?
Thank you. I think I saw that there was a mess over there, and you walked across the room and got some stuff, and your instinct was to clean up the mess. I think that's a little different than, say, a male candidate. Clean the kitchen floor after.
I think
Sure.
he just came up with my slogan. I'm running for president because I'm going to clean up the mess.
We have a mess in agriculture.
Yeah.
And you didn't mention supply management, but supply management
Yeah.
with price floors
Yes.
is what we need.
Yes.
We do have Bernie Sanders held a strong position on supply management and price floors, and he's really the only one that we've heard say much about it. But I'm sure you know, it's not just for the Bernie Sanders type candidates to do this kind of thing. In here in our history, we had the Gephardt Farm Bill, which had that reduction in supply, and then it led to a much cheaper government program. You don't need any.
Did Mark and Gephardt work?
This is an econometric study of it, and it was not passed.
It wasn't passed.
It's that question of like civil rights,
Yeah.
that is it convenient to do it?
Yeah.
Some people advise you, wait till we win more power, but I see this as a way to win more power.
Yeah.
So farmers would make more money, we would make a profit on exports, we would make a lot more than $100 billion more on exports, according to that study, over a certain period of time. And again, the government costs are way down compared to the Republicans.
Yep.
So, what about that for your campaign?
Yeah.
Can you be,
Yeah, me answer. I got you. So I would like you to update these charts for me to bring them into today's $6 so I can have it for.
Yeah.
So I have a lot of information and knowledge, particularly on supply management and price floors for dairy. Because in New York State, we have three major production. We have dairy farming, we have fruits and vegetables, and specialty crops, and we have organics. So those are the areas where I have a lot of expertise, and I know how it works in those industries. I would love to look at what you just gave me, Harvey Gebhardt, because the one person I truly trust on ag policy is Tom Harkin, because I got to know him over a few years when I first came to the Senate, so I'm very interested to see that. And I'll just explain it in dairy, and then you can do your own extrapolation for commodities. But the way dairy farming works today is really heartbreaking. Men and women who work in dairy, they spend so much money to produce milk for our kids. But right now, the price of milk is set by the price of cheese in Chicago, which can be easily manipulated. And that price of milk they're getting is not even the cost of production. The price of milk they're getting is the same as they got in the 1970s or 80s. I mean, it doesn't make sense. It's not keeping up with the cost of production, and they keep it artificially low. And it doesn't work for the farmer, and so what the outcome of this is consolidation. So we only have huge dairy farms now. Once you have consolidation, do you know how short the step is to outsourcing? It's really short, because once you've consolidated, you will be bought by a multinational. Once you're bought by a multinational, if they think production is cheaper in Mexico or in China, off they go. And one of the biggest concerns I have in ag is we want to make sure that we produce our food here. It is absolutely imperative from a national security perspective that we always produce in the United States. And so I'm interested in this idea because it's a longer term goal. It's about parity, correct? It's about making sure that we set the price of what we grow and create that is determined by the cost of production and indexed to inflation. That it's not actually kept artificially low, but it actually goes up to cover the cost, so you don't have consolidation and you don't have outsourcing. Because we want small dairies, small farms to survive. In New York State, we've lost so many dairy farmers in the last 10 years, and unfortunately, the price of milk is so low, we have dairy farmers committing suicide. And I'm not kidding, it's really devastating. And the margins are so small because there isn't supply management, because there isn't a price floor. The ones who can make money are the ones who have huge economies of scale. That's not good for food production. You want all types of farming, and you definitely want small farms and family farms. So I'm very interested, and I'm going to reach out to Tom Harkin about his idea, and maybe I'll come up with a platform for commodities over the next weeks and months too.
yes, yeah.
And we can do one more question, guys. I'm very interested.
Senator, we had a very bad flood here in 2008. We have flooding in the Mississippi, we have flooding in the Missouri, and yet we can't get people to care about climate change. We need to move to renewables, and what can you help us do to achieve that?
So I'm going to do a couple of things. I do believe that global climate change is the greatest threat to humanity that exists. Okay, so let's just start with that principle. If you have a threat to humanity that great, that significant, that real, then you're going to need a proposal that's big and bold enough to meet the urgency of the crisis. As president, I will restore our leadership on the world stage on the first day. I will reach out and reestablish the United States' role in the global climate accords, and I will lead the world's effort to tackle global climate change. I will try to pass a Green New Deal, and I know how to do it, because most of the components of the Green New Deal are already bipartisan. It's infrastructure, it's green jobs, and it's clean air, clean water, all of which are already bipartisan, all of which I've worked on for the last decade. Infrastructure, most obvious. Roads, bridges, sewers, high-speed rail, rural broadband, a new electric grid, more mass transit, all things that would help Iowa, all things that would help all of America. Green jobs, teaching our kids STEM subjects, science, technology, engineering, and math, and then giving them the job training so they can be the inventors for cellulosic ethanol, the next generation of biofuels, so they can perfect wind energy, so Iowa can continue to lead in the wind energy
There you go.
revolution. Actually inventing and coming up with the technologies and the innovations that put us forward. We don't need a space race with Russia, but how about a green energy race with China? Why not use our leadership on the world stage to engage the whole world community, to create a competition? Who's going to figure it out first? Who's going to build it bigger? Who's going to make it more effective? That's what a president can do if they want to lead. And this president doesn't want to lead. So I will lead on this issue. On clean air, clean water, last item, there's not a state who doesn't have fears and worries about tainted water. In Iowa, we've got nitrates. Can your farmers afford to clean up the water system? Absolutely not. So you're going to need the federal government to come in and say it is a national mission to have clean air and clean water in every state. It'll create economic growth. Every time you clean up a Superfund site or a brownfield site or clean up a water supply, what happens? Industry grows. You have tourism. You have fishing, you have more homes, more resources, more people invest in those areas. It is an exponential economic investment. So those are the three components. The only thing new about the Green New Deal is the goal, net zero carbon emissions in 10 years. And all I say to that goal is it's a great organizing principle and an aspirational goal worth fighting for. Just like when John F. Kennedy said, I want to put a man on the moon in 10 years, he had no clue if he could get a man on the moon in 10 years, but he knew it was a great organizing principle. He knew it was a measure of our effectiveness and our innovation and how great we were as a nation. Why not do the same thing? And so I see it as something that just needs presidential leadership, and it has to be the cornerstone of your administration. So my cornerstones, there's 4 cornerstones. 1 is green energy. 1 is getting money out of politics. 1 is building the economy through getting rid of underemployment, which we have a lot of here. And the other is building our healthcare system, because it's the #1 economic issue and concern for every single person in America.
Started as an actual march, and now is a movement. This movement is working to show lawmakers and presidential candidates that we want the wealthy to pay their fair share. Many candidates have said they would reject the Trump tax cuts that give tax windfalls to corporations and very rich people. Do you support increasing taxes on the top 1%? And do you have a plan to repeal any parts of the Trump tax cuts?
Yes and yes. Correct, yes and yes. So we know that those tax cuts overwhelmingly went to the ultra wealthy in this country, $1.5 trillion, most of it going to the ultra wealthy and the most successful companies. And they didn't invest the money in a way to create a growing economy. What did they do? They bought back their stock. What did they do? They paid dividends. Not paid. Just joined us. This is Henry, everybody. He's here. So, love to teach. Look, you got a sweatshirt. Look. There you go. Got a merch. Very nice. Okay, so back to your question. So I would roll back the $1.5 trillion. The only parts I would keep in place are the middle class tax cuts. There's a lot of damage in that tax bill. Took away the state local deductions, which for some states was crushing. That has to be fixed. And so I would start there, but I would also do some other things. And one idea for how to pay for the stuff I talked about today, the ending underemployment through job training and also the national public service idea, I would do a transaction tax. And I'm only one of 2 presidential candidates who would consider a transaction tax. And it doesn't disrupt much except for the flash traders. And the flash traders, honestly, they don't create value. The whole business model is based on how close your server is to the exchange, literally, because it's fractions of milliseconds that they make their money. And they distort stock prices. We used to look at the stock market, it used to reflect the value of a company, no more. So I would do a transaction tax, just pennies on the hundreds of dollars, and that would actually raise $77 billion a year, which is more than enough to pay for the things that I talked about today. Thank you.
Thank you, everybody. Unfortunately, that needs to be our last question. I'm sorry, but I want all of us to put our hands together and thank